and in which cases the company can recover the remuneration from its directors. It says that this section is attracted when a company is required to restate its financial statements. In case of restatement of financial statements. Now, when is the company required to restate its financial statement? It can be due to fraud, or it can be due to non-compliance with the requirements of this act or rules. Non-compliance with this act or the rules. Now, the company shall recover from any past or present MD, whole-time director, manager or CEO who received the remuneration in excess of what would have been payable as per the restatement of financial statements. So this was section 199. Another section that let's do the schedule 5 first, because that is more important. Okay, covering the schedule 5. Schedule 5 of Companies Act 2013. So the schedule 5 in all has 3 parts. Part 1, part 2 and part 3. So the first part 1, talks about the conditions to be fulfilled for appointment of managing director, whole-time director or manager without the approval of central government. Appointment of managerial personnel without approval of CG. Now it says if the following conditions are satisfied, a person can be appointed as a managerial personnel. There are basically 4 or 5 conditions. 6 conditions actually. The first one being not sentenced to imprisonment. For any period, or to a fine exceeding ₹1,000 for conviction of offence under certain acts. That is, not sentenced to imprisonment for any period or fine exceeding ₹1,000. Now there are certain acts. He is not convicted under certain acts. The various acts are Indian Stamp Act, Excise Act, Essential Commodities Act, Prevention of Food Adulteration Act, Companies Act 2013. Then we have SEBI, Securities Contracts Regulation Act, SIC Industrial Companies Act, Competition Act, FEMA, Income Tax Act, Wealth Tax, Customs, Foreign Trade Development and Regulation Act, and the last one is Prevention of Money Laundering Act. So a person not sentenced to imprisonment for any period or for a fine exceeding ₹1,000 under the following acts that we covered right now. Second thing is that a person is not detained for any period under Conservation of Foreign Exchange and Prevention of Smuggling Act. First was not sentenced to imprisonment. Second is not detained for any period, the same, under Conservation of Foreign Exchange and Prevention of Smuggling Activities Act. If the central government has given its approval to the appointment of a person convicted or detained under the above acts, no further approval of CG shall be necessary for subsequent approval if he had not been so convicted or detained or subsequent to such approval. That is, if central government says that this person can be appointed as a managerial person, even though he has been detained under Conservation of Foreign Exchange and Prevention of Smuggling Activities Act, such person can be appointed as a managerial person in a company. Third is a person who has not completed 21 years of age but has attained 70 years of age. Now, where a person has attained the age of 70 years and his appointment is approved by the special resolution, no further approval of central government is necessary. We have done this case earlier also when we started this tutorial. That is the approval by special resolution. However, there is no exception in regard to the person who has not completed the age of 21 years. This is only in respect to a person who has attained the age of 70 years. These were three that we have covered. The fourth one is managerial person in more than one company. Now this managerial person can receive remuneration from both the companies. In the two companies in which he is holding his position as a managing director or anything. But the total remuneration received should not be more than the maximum remuneration admissible to the company. That is, the remuneration received from company 1 plus company 2 shall not exceed the limits. Fifth point is that he must be a resident of India. That the person must be a resident of India. Now, who is a resident of India? It says that the person who has been staying continuously for not less than 12 months immediately before the appointment. Staying not less than 12 months. Immediately before appointment. And who has come to India to stay. For what purpose? For taking up employment. For taking up employment in India. Or for carrying a business or vocation in India. This was that the person must be resident in India, resident of India. Another point is, for a person who is proposed to be appointed in a special economic zone. Now, he can be a person resident outside India, but he should enter into India after obtaining proper employment visa from Indian mission abroad. Now, for that purpose, such person must submit the visa application with profile of the company, particulars of employer, and terms and conditions of appointment. So these were the this was the appointment of managerial person and the various conditions that we had to comply with without the approval of central government. Now comes part 2, that is the managerial remuneration, the most important part under schedule 5. We're done with part 1, now comes the part 2, which is managerial remuneration. Total sections under this part 2 we have is 5 sections. So there can be two things. One is that the company has profits, and another thing is that the company does not have profits. So the section 1 under this section deals with the companies having profits. It says that the remuneration payable should not exceed the limits specified under section 197. We have already seen section 197. It shall not exceed that. Next is section 2. This section